casual shoes, casual dress, casual remark, casual sex, casual dinner. Is one of those strike you as a bit out of place with the word casual? Well, apparently Christians don't think so. A study just came out from Pew Research a few weeks ago showing half of United States Christians say that casual sex between consenting adults is sometimes or always acceptable. What is going on? Well, that's what we're going to look at today. Now, before we dive into all this, couple notes. One, we just released recently an ebook just for you ladies that I want to tell you about. A few years ago, my wife and I came out with this book for women called How to Find Your Soulmate Without Losing Your Soul, 21 Secrets for Women. And the first chapter was the top 10 guys to avoid. And it ended up becoming pretty popular, so we just turned it into an ebook, just an adaptation of this chapter. And ladies, I'm going to run down a couple of these. I'll just run down all 10. You might recognize some or, unfortunately, all of them, but top 10 guys to avoid, all right? Number 1, the flip-flopper. One minute he's hopelessly in love with you. The next minute he won't even pick up your text messages. Number 2 is the problem child, also known as the fixer-upper. For those of you into fixing up houses or flipping them, this is like that with a boyfriend. Number 3, the walking hormone. And we've got the smooth criminal, the control freak, the older guy, the potty mouth, the tearful cheater, the spiritual midget, and then number 10, Mr. I don't have enough social skills to meet girls without the internet. Now, these are just the list of the top 10, but we want to drill down and give you more details on them. So I want to encourage you to get this free ebook. All I got to do is click the link in the show notes. You could also just go to chastity.com/10 guys. That's the number 10 and the word guys. The ebook is free, and it's just going to help you to weed out of your life these guys that frankly don't deserve you. Something you can share with your sisters, girls in the dorm, your daughter, yourself, whatever. That's where to get the ebook. Also, as I said, we'll put it in the show notes. Secondly, also in the show notes, you'll see a link for the Hallow app. It's hallow.com/lustisboring. That's going to give you 2 free weeks to check out this app. This is the number 1 Catholic app in the United States, and it's awesome. I mean, if you got, a 15-minute drive to work, instead of just playing music or whatever, just click a button and pray a rosary. Click a button, listen to a homily from Father Mike Schmitz. Click a button, read some psalms, a biblical meditation. There is so much content on this app that's going to help deepen your spiritual life. No matter what, brushing teeth in the morning, getting ready to go to bed at night, having trouble falling asleep, there's an app for that. All this stuff is content on Hallow. You definitely want to check this out. There's a link, as I said, in the show notes, hallow.com/lustisboring. Try this thing out. 14 days for free. Stand nothing to lose. It's only going to bring you closer to God, so check that out. Now, the study that I had referenced at the top of the show, here's the details on this one. The majority of Christians, this is according to Pew Research, 57% of Christians, in fact, say that casual sex, which is defined in the survey as sex between consenting adults who are not in a committed romantic relationship, is sometimes or always acceptable. Now, here's the breakdown in the numbers. 36% of evangelical Protestants said it was acceptable. 54% of mainline Protestants, 56% of Protestants in the historically black tradition, and ringing in the top of the list, us good old Catholics at 62% believe that casual sex is sometimes or always acceptable. Now, outdoing the Catholics would be the atheists, coming at 94%, followed by agnostics, interestingly, at 95%. Now, shouldn't be a shock. Our Lord told us, blessed are the pure in heart, they're going to see God. If we're not pure in heart, not only will we have trouble seeing him, but it's obviously going to be a lot more harder to be pure in heart. A couple more interesting facts about the survey. Christians who go to church monthly, about 35% of them say casual sex is okay. If the Christian does not go to church monthly, that jumps up to 75% say casual sex is okay. Now, obviously, it's not a big shocker, right? Because if someone's not that interested in the first or third commandment, odds are they're not going to drill all the way down to commandments 6 and 9. But what I want to look at today is casual sex. I'm not entirely sure that there are actually 2 words in the English language that belong so far apart from one another as casual and sex. It's like saying, freezing lava. It's like saying like a quiet lightning strike, or like a a drop-dead, gorgeously, stunningly beautiful blobfish. Now, I don't know if you've seen a blobfish, but if not, take a minute after the show here, Google that. You'll see God has quite a sense of humor, but some words do not belong together. And so what I did is I, got online and I looked at some online dictionaries for synonyms of the word casual. Now, instead of saying casual sex, I'm going to replace the synonyms of casual and pair that to the word sex, and then invite you to ask, is this even what we really want? So here we go. Casual sex could also be defined as unconcerned sex, informal sex, unceremonious sex, free and easy sex, not permanent sex, part-time sex, irregular sex, occasional sex, outsourced sex, whatever that would be, without definite or serious intention sex, careless or offhand sex, passing sex, seeming or tending to be indifferent to what is happening sex. Sounds like a lot of fun. Apathetic sex, unconcerned sex, without emotional intimacy or commitment sex. Now, when casual is used as a noun, it could mean a worker employed only irregularly, or a soldier temporarily at a station or other place of duty, and usually en route to another station, as would be the case with casual sex, always en route somewhere else. Now, some might retort, well, look, I'm fine with it. I'm sexually liberated. But I'm sorry, to take sex out of the confines of marital love and claim liberation would be a lot like taking a fish out of water and claiming that you have liberated that creature. This is not authentic liberation. Like, is this what we really want? It really isn't. In fact, there was an article that came out in Vanity Fair a couple of years ago called Tinder and the Dawn of the Dating Apocalypse. And I just want to share with you briefly here what some of the women who were interviewed in this piece actually had to say about modern dating relationships in the hookup culture. One woman said, "It is rare for a woman of our generation to meet a man who treats her like a priority instead of just an option. There's no dating. There's no relationships. They're rare. Yeah, you could have a fling that could last 7 or 8 months, and you could never actually call someone your boyfriend. Hooking up's a lot easier. No one gets hurt. Well, not on the surface. It's a contest to see who cares less, and guys win a lot at caring less." Stephanie says, "It's body first, personality second." Reese says, "Honestly, I feel like the body doesn't even matter to them as long as you're willing. It's that bad." But Amanda added, "But if you say any of this out loud, it's like you're weak. You're not independent. You somehow missed the whole memo about third wave feminism." But what I would argue is it's not just the women dissatisfied with casual sex, hooking up, sexual intimacy outside of marriage. In fact, I'm reading a book recently. I'm working through that. Matt Fradd and I are publishing a book for guys right now called Forged on how to break free from porn and lust in general and just replace those old vices with new virtues. And in it, I was reading a book and it had this really interesting anecdote where this guy's been struggling with, all kinds of bad stuff. Not only the porn and the masturbation, but cheating on his wife, prostitution, all kinds of like unwanted sexual behavior. And so he meets up with this guy and he said, I did pretty good in terms of accountability, but like I would hide the worst stuff. And he said, finally, I kind of came clean to this guy, Larry, and said, look, this is the stuff I'm struggling with. And listen to what this guy said in response to him. He says, if what you really want to do is look at porn, then go ahead and look at porn. And he said, yeah, right. Like I'm really going to do that. I chuckled cynically. Larry just looked at me dead serious and repeated himself, if what you really want to do is look at porn and masturbate, then go ahead and do it. I could tell he wasn't being flippant, but I also knew his integrity, so I launched back at him. I know this must be some kind of reverse psychology or paradoxical treatment you're trying on me, right? The look on his face, however, told me that this was not his intention. I don't get it, I exclaimed. Why are you telling me to go ahead and look at porn and masturbate? In frustration, I hit my fist against the armchair and shouted, that's not what I want to do. Larry's eyes sparkled with delight. Exactly, he cheered. That's the point. Looking at pornography and masturbating is not what you really want to do. I was speechless. Like, could it really be true? Despite my out-of-control passions, could a passion for God inside me run deeper than my desire for sex and porn? I would propose that within the heart of every human being, because we're made in the image and likeness of God, is a deeper current that longs much more for authentic sacrificial love than for some casual sexual hookup culture. I think often of the Bible verse in the Old Testament about the cisterns in the book of Jeremiah. It says that when Israel turned away from God, Jeremiah says, "The Lord said, for my people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, and hewed out cisterns for themselves, broken cisterns that can hold no water." Now, an ancient cistern, what that was a man-made reservoir built underground in arid regions in order to retain rainwater. And so, unlike a well, which taps into a deep source of living, flowing water, the cistern is really only good as the rainfall that comes in and its waterproof barrier. If that waterproof barrier is broken, no matter how much water you pour into the cistern, it will be completely useless for quenching our thirst. And I think this is the case with casual sex. It's a broken cistern. It doesn't matter how often we go back, it'll never fill us up. It's like that quote. It's often attributed to G.K. Chesterton or C.S. Lewis falsely. It was actually written by a guy named Bruce Marshall. And he said, "The young man who rings at the bell of the brothel is unconsciously looking for God." Now, it's a bit jarring to think that a guy who's hiring a prostitute is actually looking for Jesus, right? I mean, if he wanted Jesus, he could probably just have put on a nice outfit and gone to church, right? Well, how can you say he's looking for Jesus going to a brothel? I think C.S. Lewis gives us kind of an answer to that. This is one thing that he wrote. He said, "It would seem that our Lord finds our desires not too strong, but too weak. We're half-hearted creatures, fooling about with drink and sex and ambition when infinite joy is offered us, like an ignorant child who wants to go on making mud pies in a slum because he cannot imagine what is meant by the offer of a holiday at the sea. We are far too easily pleased." And you'd kind of have to argue this is the case. We're far too easily pleased. And so it doesn't work when it comes to quenching our thirst for the divine, for God, for infinite beauty. Casual sex doesn't work in relationships either. In fact, there's a study done that found that couples who begin their relationship with friends with benefits, only 9.8% of them will that relationship actually evolve into an actual committed relationship. 90% failure rate. We've seen this in even secular media. In fact, there was a magazine came out a couple years ago called The Economist. Now, this isn't, I think, like an international bi-weekly business journal kind of thing. It's not what I would normally read, but I saw it at the airport once a headline. It said, "The Science of Sexual Abstinence." So I picked it up and opened it up, and it says, headlines, "Chastity before marriage may have its uses after all." Hey, who knew? But what they did is they studied a total of 2,035 married couples and asked them, in your relationship, when did you start having sex? How are things going today? And what they found is that the couples who waited longest to begin having sexual intimacy, in particular those who waited until they were married, within their marriages had more stable relationships. They were happier in the relationships. They had better communication in the relationships. And they are also more sexually satisfied in the relationships. And so chastity is not the enemy of love, but rather the guardian of it. And so casual sex doesn't work when it comes to our spirituality, doesn't work when it comes to our relationships, our emotions, certainly doesn't work out when it comes to the life of children. I remember once seeing a condom advertisement that called pregnancy the mother of all nightmares. If that is our outlook on the gift of human life, that pregnancy is like some kind of disease. I mean, I've asked high school guys, hey, what's the most common sexually transmitted disease? I remember one guy raised his hand. He's like, I know, pregnancy. And I'm like, no, like kids are not bacteria, okay? But if pregnancy is a disease, then and you get sick, then what's the cure? Abortion must be the cure, right? And what we're living in is a fear of our own fatherhood, a fear of our own motherhood, a fear of not just what's going to come forth from this act, but a fear of how God created us. And some people say, well, you don't need to get all worked up about this. I mean, sex is natural. Look, the people who clamor the most about how natural sex is are the very same people who are the least likely to actually have natural sex. You want natural sex? Okay, well, no computers, no contraception, nothing. Just one man, one woman, that's it. And they say, oh, that's kind of dangerous, right? Okay, then why are we so afraid of the way that it's created? It's because we're taking it out of context. And our bodies, I think, suffer as a result. Not just the relationship, the children, spirituality, but our bodies. In fact, I saw a researcher, this guy's from Washington, D.C., and this guy said this, I'm quoting him, the number one determinant of whether a person will catch a sexually transmitted disease is the number of lifetime sexual partners. We seem to go out of our way as a government and a nation to avoid telling people that, but we hand out a lot of free condoms. But I'm going to invite you to switch the narrative here. What if, in some alternate universe, saving sex for marriage actually made you more likely to get a sexually transmitted disease? That if you were both virgins on the wedding night, your odds of getting herpes just goes through the roof. Imagine how the secular culture would say, look, see how unnatural that is? See how unhealthy that is? That if you save sex for marriage, you're more likely to get gonorrhea and syphilis and trichomoniasis and human papillomavirus. Like, my goodness, it's obvious. Look, we're just not built for monogamy. But the fact is, nature is the opposite. Nature is in favor of monogamy. And yet nobody seems to be pointing this out, that nature rebels against what is a disorder of what God has built into us. It isn't so much how we ought to not act. Like you shouldn't have casual sex. It's just, it isn't who we are. And yeah, the temptations are going to be there because of concupiscence, which is our darkened intellect, our weakened wills, our disordered appetites. But at the end of the day, it's just not who we are. I mean, this is why St. Paul says in Corinthians, he says, do you not know that he who joins himself to a prostitute becomes one body with her? This isn't like a biblical metaphor. This is a biological reality. The church is not the one telling us, don't go too far. Oh, you're going too far with that girl. The church is the one actually saying, you know what? Go all the way. Not just tonight, not with some attractive woman you met at the bar. No. Don't just give her your phone number and a night of whatever. No, give her your last name, give her a wedding ring, give her your address, give her your bank account, give her the life within, give her absolutely everything. And then when we do this, our bodies are speaking the truth, that the total gift of the body, sexual intimacy, will correspond to the total gift of the person, because we simply are not meant to be given in parts, but only as a whole. And by living as God has created us to live, we'll thrive and we'll have greater joy. This is why St. John Paul II said chastity is the sure way to happiness. Now, if you want to drill deeper to learn about this stuff, to look at the survey that came out, I'm going to put a link to the Pew Research survey in the show notes. And also, I want to invite you, if you want to support this program, help us to reach more people, create more content. We need a lot of help. We're getting started on a lot of video editing, all kinds of stuff that's costing a good chunk of change. But the people that are supporting us and doing this are our Patreon supporters. And the more support we get through Patreon, the more people globally we can reach with this message. And so if you're interested in becoming a Patreon supporter, you just click the link in the show notes, patreon.com/Jason Evert, and you can pick. Hey, I'll just give $5 a month. It's huge for us. Some people, I'll give 20, I'll give 50, whatever, and then we'll send you free t-shirts, free books. You'll have early access to all the podcast episodes. At some of the tiers, I'll give you a phone call personally. I'll send you also a personal video to answer any questions you might have, give you my personal email, just a way for you to come a lot closer into the ministry. And then if you do have questions, we can answer them privately through Patreon. Or if you want, we can answer your question through this podcast to be able to help more people as well. And so right now, with so many different events getting canceled because of the pandemic, this is a huge way, if you want, to support our family, our ministry, and everything we're trying to do. So it's down there at patreon.com. So please share this content with other people. Leave reviews on the podcast. If you're watching Lust is Boring on one of those, help us to spread this message to more people. And in the meantime, be assured of my prayers, and please keep us in yours as well. God bless, and keep your standards high as heaven.